Okay. And I'm gonna admit one or two more people. I'm gonna mute a couple of people. Okay. Okay, so welcome, second ACTL meeting of the year. Thank you all for coming out this evening. We do have some folks who are new who've joined us just since the September meeting, which was a very short time ago, but schools who have now had added reps. So, you know, welcome to those of you who are new. I think I've connected with everyone individually who's joining us now. You know, for newcomers, we you know, we try to have a very inclusive, sorry, let me mute a couple people here. Try to have a very inclusive community here, encourage, you know, curiosity and being respectful and generally having an orientation towards generating ideas and finding solutions, even as we are sometimes, you know, surfacing problems and areas of concern. We are going to, I'm going to mute a couple folks here. We are going to move through a whole bunch of topics over the course of this year that we, you know, will have the opportunity to share sort of the parent and community perspectives on, and in ways that hopefully will, you know, build towards a better APS for everyone. As a reminder for this evening, we do encourage the use of the chat for posting resources and questions, but this evening we do have a formal presentation, so I would actually encourage you to hold your questions, see if they are answered in the course of the presentation, and then we will have a Q&A session for a short period at the end, and we can drop questions in the chat at that point. You know, sometimes I personally find it very distracting when there's a whole lot going on in the chat at the same time that a presentation is happening. So I would encourage us all to really focus on the presentation, and we can get to those questions as quickly as we can at the end. So we will do that presentation, then we will have Q&A. With the whole group. Then we're going to break into two groups this evening. So we will have a group to talk about math in elementary level, and then we'll have a group for math in the middle and high school levels. And we're going to sort of drill down a little bit in those conversations to talk about sort of what we feel like are some of the key takeaways and some of the questions that you might engage with your communities around, and anything else that we want to sort of float up in terms of feedback and perspective from our communities. So we'll have hopefully about 20-25 minutes for those discussion groups, and then we'll do a little bit of a quick sharing out, create some quick slides with those bullet points in terms of takeaways and questions. And that will take us almost to the end of the time. We'll hopefully have a quick update about the VLP, because we spent a lot of time on that last time, and we want to just you know, see what updates there are to share, and that will be it for this evening. So I am going to, I think, just turn it over to Bridget. And Bridget, are you? You probably need to share screen. Yes.
Yes, I do, and I'm gonna. I just posted a link to the presentation in the chat, so folks can have it, but I will share my screen as well. Let me make sure I have it up as well. Okay, before I commit here. Okay. All right, is the screen shared, I hope? Yes. This is strange here. Okay, I have another screen in front of me, so it's a little distracting. Okay, here we go. So I want to thank everybody for the opportunity for me to share the mathematics monitoring report that Shannon Ellis, our mathematics supervisor, shared with the board on Thursday, the 30th, at the board meeting. Shannon unfortunately isn't able to join us tonight, and I am not even going to purport to do as fabulous a job as Shannon did at the Thursday board meeting. I don't even come as a close second to her, but humbly, for those of you who were not able to view her presentation, that it had a lot of really good and current information, and so I felt it was important that when Bethany asked if we could speak to the state of mathematics in APS, I thought it was important to share the information that Shannon shared. So I put the link to the presentation in the chat, and Sarah Putnam is here to answer questions as they pop up in the chat. And then, as Bethany said, we'll have an opportunity afterwards to have some discussion. Do also want to thank Ty Bird, who's representing our Office of School Support tonight, for being here. And I'm not sure, I didn't see if we had another rep here from school support. So if I've missed you, my colleagues, I want to thank you for being here as well. So let's begin. And in this presentation, essentially, we're going to talk about the summary of the key ideas, and then we'll do a bit of a data summary connecting the work pre-pandemic and the present. We'll do some highlights of the work of the Math Office and some supporting research. We're also going to clarify and bring to light some work with the Virginia Mathematics Pathways Initiative, share some bright spots, and get at the end to the recommendations. And at that point, I'll also share some of the feedback that we received from our school board, and we'll have some Q&A. I do want to point out that we purposely organized this presentation so that you would have access to the, excuse me, I feel like I've lost you for a moment. Am I sharing this? Okay, hello, gone away. Okay, back. We purposely organized our presentation so that you would have access to the supporting data, and there's quite a lot in an appendix at the end of the presentation. So this presentation will take you up to slide, I think it's 27, and then 28 through 72 are all sorts of data charts that show students' performance on to and including math inventory and SOL results, along with several other data charts. So we did that on purpose because we want to use the presentation to share with you our analysis of the student performance data, focus on how we're using this data to move forward to support student learning, and some of the initiatives that we've taken from this data. But certainly we wanted you to have access to that, so you will as you continue to kind of scroll through the presentation. So we're going to start again. We talked about the purpose. You'll see members of our office here. So we have Shannon Ellis on the right. We have Robin Kay, who's a new addition as our elementary math specialist. Dr. Stephanie Nichols, our secondary specialist, and then Dolores Baldaz, our very helpful and important admin assistant here. And you'll see here that, again, what the purpose is to give you an update since the program evaluation presentation, which occurred right before schools closed in February 2020. So really, we're using that as our launching board here. You'll also see some recommendations of actions and also resources as we move forward. So let's start. I'm going to give you a moment just to read the mission of the Mathematics Office. And I'll pause here. I think I really want to emphasize here the positive mathematics culture where all students actively engage in their mathematics journey. And you'll also see that echoed in the vision of the Mathematics Office. So as Shannon said in the presentation, and I want to underscore, our goal is that no Arlington Public Schools student would describe themselves as, quote, not a math person, that we want them to see themselves as lifelong mathematics who have the abilities to engage with the world through a mathematical lens. I would say that personally, I am a math person because, hey, I go out to eat and I figure out the tip. I go shopping and I figure out the discounts. So I, install carpet in my house, so I figure out square footage. So that's exactly where we want our students to be, is describing themselves as and understanding themselves as a math person. And you'll see that that really aligns with the goals of the office. So ongoing gathering of data on our students' understanding, so that we can modify instruction to meet their needs, ensuring equitable experiences for our students and consistency in what's being taught, embodying a growth mindset as educators, and providing opportunities for continual learning, and that our classroom structures promote strong mathematics community and really emphasizing student choice, voice, collaboration, and reflection. And this was a really fundamental piece coming from Greg Duncan at UC Irvine, that a child's early understanding of mathematical concepts is one of the strongest predictors of later academic success. We spend a lot of time in APS really emphasizing the importance of literacy. And this is not to devalue literacy, but it is to elevate that if we can get our kids having a strong foundation in mathematical concepts, research is showing that we then are setting them up for later academic success as well. And I think what you'll see is that from the program evaluation and the work that we did pre-pandemic, we really emphasized what worked well in the APS mathematics program and what needed support, and what our challenges were. And I think you'll also see that the pandemic has really emphasized our strengths and our needs. We'll speak specifically to the resources that we need moving forward in this presentation, but that is a key point in the presentation. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of those pre-pandemic and current challenges. We do want to identify that there are opportunity gaps for our Black and Hispanic students, our English learners, our students with disabilities, and economic disadvantaged students. And you'll see that when you review our student performance data in the appendix. We want to emphasize that we absolutely need high quality curricular resources. It has been many years since our mathematics office has received the resources that are necessary to support student learning. And we want to emphasize our school-based staff, most particularly our math coaches and our math interventionists. And I want to underscore that our math coaches absolutely play a fundamental role in our tier 1, our core instruction, and that's instruction for every student. And then the interventionists that are necessary are really focusing on tier 2 and then tier 3. So if you remember that inverted or that pyramid, the base is tier 1 for all of our students. Then when students are demonstrating that they need additional support, right? So if we're looking at all of our students are at about 80%. Then the kids who need additional support may be again at about 15% of our students. And then those tier 3 students need intensive support for longer periods of time, and that's where our interventionists would come in. And then the other piece is that we're really working towards multiple pathways for our students, and the Vmpi will help us move in that direction. So to underscore, again, some of these needs that have been identified in our current challenges, you'll see in the supporting data the opportunity gaps evident in our MI, and that's our mathematics inventory, and our SOL assessments, right? It's also showing that those kids who needed interventions pre-pandemic due to unfinished learning absolutely are showing us that they need ongoing interventions. And you'll see that our program evaluation has pointed out a noticeable difference in course trajectory pathways. I've talked a bit about the resources already, and we've got some data to support that over 30% of our students need tier 2 or tier 3 intervention based on our mathematics inventory and our Dreambox data. And you'll see also, in addition to interventions, we've got significant numbers of our students who are requiring extensions in one or more of their grade level strands. And then because we have been slower to provide resources as of late for our teachers and our mathematics office, our teachers are turning towards outside resources that are not sometimes as well vetted and perhaps not as rigorous too. And so all of that information is coming from the program evaluation that was in place in February 2020. So again, you'll see a need for human resources. Sorry, I got a little fast in my clicking. You'll see the need for our coaches, that we need increased depth and complexity for our advanced learners. We need our teachers to have confidence in their ability to extend mathematics concepts. And then almost all of our elementary and our middle school teachers report receiving support from a math coach. I think it's really important to underscore here that every year, as we get to budget time, our mathematics coaches are not guaranteed budget line items. And so, as far as interventionists are concerned, many of our principals have had to be creative with their staffing to identify staff who could serve as math interventionists. And so it's compelling to see that our mathematics teachers, almost all of them are indicating that they've received support from the math coach. And so that's something we want to keep sacrosanct as we move forward with our budgets. You'll see here some of the data from our program evaluation about multiple pathways for our student groups, particularly our English learners, students with disabilities, and Black students who have seen limited or stagnant enrollment in AP classes. You'll also see our math inventory data. It talks about students are engaging in higher level math courses before they reach grade level proficiency. Excuse me, that's my dog playing with his chew toy. One moment. Excuse me for a second. Go. Apologies. And then you'll see that our AP, our advanced placement pass rates for math courses have been below state or national averages. So let's though also take a look at some of our strengths. And you'll see that our instruction is purposeful, it's dynamic, it uses the relevant data, and it helps our teachers can personalize their learning opportunities. That professional collaboration is happening on the regular, and even during the pandemic, when teachers had to be teaching from a distance, they found ways to come together to learn from one another and support one another. We've got a high level of student engagement in classes, and this is really compelling information. Almost half of our students by the end of grade 12 have taken an advanced or college level mathematics course. Often these are by choice as opposed to for credit requirements. And continuing with some of our current strengths, you'll see that based on our math inventory data, that 90% of our APS students have demonstrated growth during the pandemic, and 64% demonstrated more than a year's worth of growth. You'll also see that student engagement with the Dreambox lessons, and that while we are absolutely not encouraging comparisons in this past SOL experience, APS did outperform the states in previous SOLs and then in 2021. You'll see too, and this comes back to a resounding endorsement on the part of our principals, that when they needed to add additional interventionists or to make their coaches more than a 0.5, then they wanted a full-time coach, our principals have used their staffing to be able to make that happen, which is a real mandate for our coaches. And then you'll see that the engagement of our staff in professional learning offered by our mathematics office. Let's look at some of the work to strengthen the math program. This is the professional collaboration that we just spoke of, engaging in Dr. Goldie Mohammed's equity framework for culturally and historically responsive teaching. I spoke a little bit about that at our last meeting, and the math office was an enthusiastic participant in that as well. You'll notice the work with the 5 learning pursuits in the Algebra 1 curricular documents, looking at enrollment at the secondary level to find patterns and to find areas of need. And then our staff and our administrators are engaging in a book study surrounding catalyzing change this year. You'll see that our purchase of the math inventory screener for grades 2 through 4 is new this year, and it allows us to have even more targeted data so that we can target students' needs earlier. And that is, again, allowing us to maximize our students' learning at an earlier age. The math office is working closely with the ATSS office to revise and design the Math 6 Strategies course to leverage students' work as they enter middle school. You'll see work around pre and post assessments, and then the data dives with our math coaches in our schools. So when we think about professional learning and teacher support, we've got an entire spectrum as it relates to our curriculum documents and translating those resources into Spanish for our immersion sites and integrating work from the VDOE into some of the curricular work that we've been doing. You'll see the addition of coaches and interventionists. I spoke about the book study. You'll see other professional learning that's targeted, and then the collaboration with the Office of Special Ed so that we can target professional learning for mathematics instruction, particularly for our special education teachers. And then you'll see also how we've strengthened parents and community communication. So our evening meetings for current and rising middle school families so that we can really look at what pathways are available for students. The ongoing continuous improvement of our mathematics placement process and recommendation letters and work on the website. So I started the presentation emphasizing the early mathematics learning and how fundamental that is. We've talked a lot about our math codes, and you'll see that those positions are critical for improving student learning and instruction. When we address tier 2 and tier 3 learning, we really want to emphasize that, remember, core is tier 1, tier 2, which occurs outside of the time dedicated to tier 1, small groups, right? And this is where our interventionists have particular support and efficacy. And you'll see that as far as readiness and trajectory, it's really interesting that 70% of our college majors don't require calculus, and those kids who took AP calculus in high school end up retaking calculus in college. So you see what the predictor of earning a B or better in college was if they earn no less than A's in their Algebra 1, 2, and geometry. So we always want to emphasize the connection of our work with the strategic plan, and you'll see one element is ensuring that there's multiple pathways for student success, right? So we've got this increased achievement for all of our reporting groups in the district, and that we're looking for students to make at least 1 year's growth of assessment. Another connection with the strategic plan is our engaged workforce, and you'll see some of the indicators here. And we do want to emphasize, because the Virginia Mathematics Pathways Initiative has hit the news earlier, and so we want to make sure that folks are aware of the good work of the Vmpi, which is really meant to update and modernize our mathematics curriculum and to remind folks that our revisions occur every 7 years. And you'll see that it's a partnership with the VDOE and our community college system. You'll see based on extensive research, and it's the curricula is being developed right now by educational professionals, some of whom work for Arlington Public Schools. So it's a real partnership with the K-12 schools, higher education, and representatives from the workforce. So what is it? Well, it's really meant, as we talk about modernizing our mathematics curricula, to require more depth and complexity for our students, some real world applications so that our students can be mathematicians and using that mathematical lens as they apply it to the real world. We see that students at the latest in grade 8 will be exposed to what's considered high school content, and that there will be more relevant high school course options and pathways for students rather than some rigidity in our current pathways. You'll see that absolutely higher level math in our calculus and other IB and dual enrollment courses will remain options. And this full implementation will start in the year 25-26. So our kids who are currently in grade 4 will start to see their changes in their middle school courses. And so what are we doing? Well, this Catalyzing Change book study is helping us understand the why behind these changes. We're using the early screeners that we purchased this year for our kids in grades 2 to 4 and to target unfinished learning. And then you'll see also the revision to the Math 6 strategies course. We're revising curricular documents and professional learning. And we're collaborating with other offices, specifically English learners, the Office of Special Education, our gifted office, Equity and Excellence, and ATSS. So let's do a little emphasis on our bright spots, right? So we've talked about student engagement even during the pandemic, and that our math office had a tremendous participation in professional learning, our ongoing curricular work, and our cross-county collaborative learning teams that evidence teachers' commitment to developing innovative ways to collaborate with each other. We saw the reflection of equity in the revision of the mission and vision statements of the office. And as I said, we have APS staff, including Shannon Ellis, our supervisor, and Dr. Nichols, our teacher specialist, as well as Laurel Wiersma, who is a math teacher at Wakefield. So all three of those folks are serving on the Vmpi state committees. We also want to highlight our math teachers who achieved national board certification, and our Jerry Mascaloni, who teaches at the Arlington Career Center, being one of 3 state finalists for a very prestigious award for excellence in mathematics. You'll also see that sort of using our mathematics as a way to reach out to our students with autism and giving them a way to understand boundaries using number codes. Thank you to Miriam Thomas for that. So let's come back to the summary before we get into our resources, remembering that the early understanding of mathematical concepts is one of the strongest predictors of later success in academics. And remembering that the pandemic has really emphasized our strengths and exacerbated our needs. So our recommendation as far as resources is both fiscal and human. So we want to ensure that all of our schools have math coaches and at the full-time level. We want to ensure that our schools have math interventionists, particularly for those needs in tier 2 and 3. And as far as specific budget line item requests, we are moving forward with a K-12 mathematics resource adoption, increasing our elementary math coach position to a 1.0 allocation at each school. We want to ensure that currently our high schools do not have math coach positions, and nor do our special programs. So we want to fund those as well. And then we want to fund those interventionists where the data suggests the greatest need. And with that, you will see then the connection with our school board's priorities is articulated there, most particularly focusing on literacy and math. and addressing students' needs. So with that, I will pause and take your questions. And I'll stop sharing here so I can see.
Thank you so much, Bridget. And I realized that was a huge amount of information for folks. So I see that Wesley Joe dropped a question in the chat, and I invite others to begin dropping questions in the chat as well. I just want to recognize that we do have a math committee on ACTL. And I know I saw Rachel, I think that was Rachel Carrig, drop into the meeting. She is the chair of the math committee. I know we have several members of the math committee here. I see Wesley Joe and Marion, and I saw Amy Beaumont, who was the previous chair of the math committee. So welcome to all of those folks, and perhaps others that I don't see on my screen at the moment. We will hear from the math committee in a couple of months in terms of the detailed work that they are doing, looking also at a lot of what Bridget has just laid out and what the school board is considering. So welcome to all those folks. And Rachel, at any point, if you'd like to jump in and make a comment or two about what the math committee is talking about and working on this year, you're welcome to do that. In the meantime, please do drop questions that you have in the chat. I think Wesley's question went to just the specifics of what is SY23. Is that the school year that ends with June 23? Or is it 23-24?
Go with 23-24 and do a little research on that. But that's my best guess at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, so Michael has posted, how much professional learning around mathematics are elementary teachers receiving, and is this strategic?
Right, and this is where Sarah Putnam, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and I are going to play tag team. So I'm going to start with a response, and then I absolutely welcome if Sarah wants to jump in. Yes, we can say it's strategic because we've been blessed this year with the addition of the math screener for our kids in grades 2 through 4, which is new this year, and that provides really targeted information as far as our students' needs. Our older students have engaged in math inventory for some time. And so using that student performance data that teachers are trained in how to read it and how to use it allows them then to sort of have real-time relevant professional learning as far as how to provide those interventions. So I'm not sure, Sarah, if you want to add to that. Maybe
yes, I was going to give another example of another piece besides the screener data that we have. We also, so they use Dreambox as a K-8 tool. And one thing that they focused on last year and this year is really being more purposeful with that data. So there are professional learning sessions with that really focused on the predictive insights that Dreambox gives us. So they're going to engage in a session. Even some teachers will do this coming up on Monday when we have a day of learning on October 11th. They'll use that data to figure out, okay, what is it telling me about where students are in their learning, and then how they can use that to support instruction. And it really will tie in nicely with what lessons they should be crafting for teachers, for students moving forward. So Dreambox has been in place for a while, and now I think teachers are really in a good place to start using that data to support students even more strategically.
Thanks. I'm just going to keep rolling through the questions that are popping into the chat. So the question was asked, can you flesh out the extensions in strands concept?
That piece, I think you're referring to was that in part of the Vmpi work? So I believe that's probably that slide, Bridget. Is that where or they were referencing it? I think you're on mute. where we look at the strands in mathematics, what Vmpi is really focused on is what they call sort of essential concepts. So they're going to look at what concepts are essential for students to be learning so that they can engage in higher level mathematics, and where might students be ready for extensions based on the data that we have.
Thanks, Sarah.
So you want to keep going in the chat?
Yeah,
Or you want to read?
the elementary, middle school, do they have full-time math coaches? I think that's not the, is that the current planning factor or is it a 0.5? It's a 0.5.
0.5 at elementary and a full 1.0 at middle school. So that's what's allocated in the budget. As Bridget mentioned, principals at the elementary level see the value so much in that role that they sometimes will look at what other staffing they have, and they're able to add something to make that elementary coach a full 1.0. And in some cases, sometimes even more than that. So some schools actually have 2. So
right. Is Title I funding, you can use Title I funding for math?
They can match it, right? So there's very strict rules around supplementing and supplanting, but since every school has a 0.5, we can also use more to match that if needed.
And Sarah, I want to riff just a moment before we jump to the next question in the chat. So APS has demonstrated a commitment to math coaches by making that 0.5 available for each of our elementary schools and a 1.0 for middle schools. But as far as the differentiating between the math coach, really tier 1 support, and the math interventionist, right, for tier 2 and tier 3, that becomes that hasn't been included in our budgets, and so that principals often are using their staffing allocations to try to create some interventionists. So we absolutely see the need, as we mentioned in the presentation. So.
Thank you. So Bridget, there's a long question that Merritt has put in the chat, and I don't know if you had a chance to read through it, but I'll read it for everyone. The gaps in math achievement and advanced math enrollment are concerning. How will APS address equity in mathematics teaching? Many Black and Brown students are historically denied opportunities to engage in mathematics on a conceptual level. How will teacher training, teacher evaluation, and curriculum assessment align to address this so that all students have access to conceptual learning and are prepared for advanced math classes?
So, Sarah, I'm going to start with the work with Goldie Mohammed's equity framework and talk a bit about that. And then if you want to jump in, because I know that you really led the work with that curriculum reframing. So if you remember when we talked last time, that Goldie Mohammed really emphasizes 5 pursuits: identity, skill development, intellectualism, criticality, and joy. And as we unpack our math curriculum, we want to ensure that there are opportunities for our students to see themselves in the work that they're doing. We want them to know and understand what skills are required of them, and that they have opportunities to develop those skills. We want them to be thinking about the concepts that are presented in ways that provide depth and complexity. We want them to experience joy in math. If you remember, we led with, folks often say, I was bad at math, or I'm not a math person. And so by reframing our curriculum, we want our students to own themselves as mathematicians. And so, and part of doing that is seeing themselves in that work as well. So I'm going to step aside because Sarah has demonstrated a great deal of leadership in this effort. If you want to speak more to that, Sarah.
I think you did a nice job of explaining it. The other example I was going to give that was in the presentation was the work that the math office is really doing around the Math 6 strategies course. So oftentimes when we look at how Shannon framed the presentation was engagement in early mathematics and making sure that students have that solid foundation is really one of the biggest predictors of their success. So when we have students that are leaving elementary school that don't have a solid foundation, oftentimes they find themselves in a strategies course in addition to their grade level course. And they're really taking a hard look specifically at Math 6 strategies so that then we can help solidify students' conceptual understanding, as Mr. Gillard mentioned, so that they aren't being taught tricks, right? We are not fans of those tricks or memorizing things. Like, we want students to be able to explain why certain things work, right? There's nothing wrong with an algorithm as long as they can explain why indeed it works. So the Math 6 strategies teachers really are engaged in year-long professional learning with the math office to take a look at what are we doing in that course, so that then students are moving into pre-algebra 7, pre-algebra 8 through middle school and really ready for more success in advanced courses when they get into high school. So that is really strategic on the part of both the math office and, as Bridget mentioned, ATSS, to think about how do we intervene early enough so that students have that opportunity moving forward.
Thanks. We have a lot of questions now, so I'm going to see what I can very quickly get through. I do see a question about Vmpi and when it starts. So fourth graders and then moving through, it doesn't change for students who are in high school. So it begins with those fourth grade students and moves through. I learned that last year in the math committee when I attended. I see a comment from Maureen about sort of the surprise about students doing high school content at the latest in 8th grade, and maybe inconsistency with finding that some students are engaging in higher level math courses before mastering grade level learning. I think, Sarah, you just spoke to that a little bit. I don't know if you want to say anything more clarifying there.
So I'm looking at the last part of that question, and they asked, isn't this inconsistent with finding that some students are engaging in higher level mathematics? I think the thing to be clear here, when students demonstrate readiness, there is no one that will deny them their ability or access to engage in that higher level coursework. So that's something we need to be really clear on, that the ultimate goal is making sure that everybody is equipped with conceptual understanding to engage in those courses, right? As when you get into more algebraic reasoning, if you don't have that solid foundation, that's when you do revert back to tricks and memorizing things. And that only works for certain students. It doesn't work for everybody. Clearly, that's why there's that gap. So I think it's important to note that when students are ready, they will still have access to those opportunities.
And there's a question related to whether APS is looking at the data around the students who are recommended for higher level math classes and then wind up dropping back down to a lower level, and then whether that trajectory returns them back into advanced classes, or whether they are using outside tutors and that kind of thing. So I don't know if you have a sense around sort of the extent to which that happens in terms of being recommended for higher level math and then dropping back down.
So I think it goes hand in hand with helping this group also see that the math office works really closely with all of the schools at the end of the year to make a very informed recommendation for where students should go. And they look at multiple data points, and they really are trying as much as possible to make sure they're finding the right fit for students. Sometimes what happens, and right now, it's a recommendation, right? So ultimately, if they maybe advance too quickly, and as this person noted, they may have followed a certain trajectory and said, oh, wow, I've overshot. Maybe I'm not feeling as successful in this current coursework. So it's not about changing a pathway or anything, but it's about helping educate both schools, parents, students, that it's okay if you're here and you can still get to an advanced level course if you are following with your classmates. It's not a matter of like having to jump. So I'm not sure if I'm really answering the question there, but we are certainly looking to see why students may have reached that advanced point and say, hey, this isn't for me. And we obviously don't want that to happen. Bridget, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that piece.
No, I think the one piece I'm perseverating on in that question is pushing kids when they're not ready. And we have seen a phenomenon, for example, that kids who were engaged in higher level math work when they weren't ready, when they hit Algebra 2, there is a real loss of interest, loss of agency, a significant drop in interest in moving beyond Algebra 2. And so I think that the thinking behind the Vmpi is giving kids not just the opportunity to engage with these concepts that gives them agency as they move forward as mathematicians, right? So they're not memorizing, they're understanding, but it also starts to broaden the pathway opportunities. So I think about my own son, who would not describe himself as a mathematician, although he sure has figured out how to analyze his DoorDash tips. He ended up, he took statistics because that's what was left for him. And I think the Vmpi would have, were he lucky enough to be supported by the Vmpi, he'd have all sorts of opportunities to engage in mathematics classes that would support him in his music theory classes now. So I think we're really onto something as far as the Vmpi acknowledging that kids need those fundamental concepts and have agency with it, and that we don't need to be pushing them faster than they're ready to move forward. I would like to address that one other question following it about the concern about not having math textbooks.
Yes, I was going to say, let's do the resources question, and then I'm going to bump us into groups, and we can continue talking about some of those things that are in the chat in our groups.
Sure. Absolutely. So if you remember in the slide, explicitly, we are moving forward with requesting K-12 resources for this budget year. And so that is explicitly to not have the situation that's described in the chat of not having had new textbooks in nearly 11 years, right? We want to stem that with some immediacy. So.
Okay, thank you. So here is how we're going to do this. I'm going to open up 2 breakout rooms. You all will self-select. So one will say elementary math discussion, and the other will say middle and high school math discussion. And you will simply be able to click to join one of those groups. Jason Papakosma and Kelly Alexis will facilitate in the middle and high, and Ann Paris will facilitate in elementary, and hopefully I will join her. We'll see if I get there. Questions for discussion, and the facilitators have these questions, but I'll just say them quickly. What do you feel are some of the key takeaways about the status of math education and the direction in which we are headed? What questions could you engage your community with around math education? So thinking about it in middle and high, thinking about what kinds of questions do you have? What kinds of questions would be appropriate to maybe ask in your school community and see how people respond or what they think, because we will offer the opportunity to bring some comments back from your communities at the next meeting. We'll pick up the topic of math again briefly at the next meeting and allow for some direct feedback from school communities. So we want to help you prepare for that in terms of what you sort of understand from this conversation, maybe if there are still some outstanding questions, and then, you know, thinking about what kinds of questions your community might engage with. So I'm going to send you out into your groups, and when we come back together, we will do a quick report out and we'll create quickly some slides with those takeaways and questions. So I hope that I have done this well, and I'm gonna just quickly adjust the time of how long we have. I'm gonna give us about 20 minutes, I think, and you should get a timer, and it will you should now see an option to join breakout rooms. Do you see them?
Yes. This
Yes.
is Ken.
Okay. If you don't see it, you click at the bottom of your screen and you can join a room.
I see the rooms, but I don't see the option to join it. What am I doing wrong?
Um,
Yeah, I don't see
I'm
it.
gonna, Sarah, I can assign you what room.
Okay.
would you like to-
Send me to elementary, please. Bridget and I
Yes.
are dividing that way.
Same here for Todd Truitt. I can't.
Okay, then Todd, you would like to go to elementary?
Correct.
Bethany, can you send me to high school and middle school? I don't see it either. This is
Sorry, who
Kelly.
said that?
This is Kelly Alexis.
Oh, Kelly, I am, oh, sorry, it's jumping around on my screen. Okay, Kelly, I am
Okay.
sending you to middle and high.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, you'd like to go to middle and high?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, Wendy, middle and high?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, who do I have left here?
Eric and Sidus, can you send me to middle and high as well?
Yep, you got it.
Thank
Okay, Rena, are you there?
I am here. Sorry. I'm on my tablet, so I don't think it is popping up.
Okay, where would you like to go?
Middle. Hi.
And Tia, are you there?
Oh, no.
Rena, you may have to accept.
Can you send me again? I think it disappeared on me.
Okay, it actually is telling me that you're in the room. Yeah, I know. Let me see what I can do.
It's okay.
Rachel, do you want me to send you to a room?
Yes, actually, I see the button now
Okay.
that I've restarted, so I'm going to join the middle and high school. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if Rena, let me see what I can do with you here. Okay, I'm sending you again, and you wanted to go to middle high?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it believes that you're there.
Okay.
Yeah, see if there's
No worries.
a way that you can accept an invitation to that room.
Let me see.
Mr. Goldstein, are you there? Would you like to go somewhere? Or are you just gonna hang out?
Yeah, elementary, please.
Okay. Rena, I don't know what happened. Okay, and Tia, I don't know if you're there with me. I don't see you. So Rena, the only choice it's giving me is to move you to the elementary.
That's okay. I have an elementary school
All right,
kid,
let me
too.
see if I can, let's see if that works. Or if it's just going to keep you here with me.
I'm sorry. I had to step away and I think I heard you say my name. This is Tia.
I did, Tia. We broke into groups. Do you want to go to the middle high or to the elementary group?
Oh, either one, because I have all three school levels, but I'm the rep for this group for high school.
Okay, I will send you there then. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Rosie, did you get bumped from your room? Did you go to a breakout room?
No, I didn't because my family called in like, we have an emergency Zoom meeting. We're trying to move my mom.
Oh.
So I was like, oh God, I'm in the middle of this meeting. So it's okay if I'm not in a breakout room, but that math report was really interesting.
And remind you that this is still in the recording, the meeting.
Yeah, no, it was fabulous. But it's good. I want to bring that back to the CTAE.
I think you should. I think it's really important, actually.
Right, and so relevant for our committee. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I've been following the math committee last year, and then I watched this presentation at the school board meeting the other night, and then again tonight. And it takes a while for it all, the information to really gel and make sense. But I know that we're encouraging the gifted services committee and the science committee, and like, you know, the content is relevant across multiple committees.
No, absolutely. And also just thrilled to
stop talking. All right, let's see.
All right.
It was good because Marion got cut off mid-sentence, so we were not hurting for conversation.
I'm going to remute some folks here as we come back in. Thank you all for tolerating. The way that Zoom kicks you out of rooms is just so unceremonious. I mean, it's really, okay. So how I want to try to do this, I'm going to look quickly at the time. We are in pretty good shape, kind of. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a blank slide deck, and I'm going to I'll start with the elementary group. I will ask them to share, whoever's going to share, what it is that they have as a summary. And I will drop it into the slide. So who's going to talk? Is that Anne?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute myself.
Okay.
Unceremoniously. Okay. I will start talking, but we were not so organized as to have it all laid out. So I hope other members of the elementary group will pipe up and fill in the blanks from me. So
that sounds good, and talk fast.
Okay, so the biggest concern that kept coming up, and a question that would be very useful to take back to the community, so we're sort of covering two things at once, is the concerns about engagement on a device versus pencil and paper. And some of that is a pandemic specific sort of question, but also just going forward. I'm sorry, this is not more coherent. There was talk about Dreambox in the presentation, and a lot of people are hearing discomfort with that as a way of evaluating the students. So it looks like Paula actually put in the chat something that pulls it together. How much do teachers rely on Dreambox for understanding the level of students? And I lost it here. How much of the work is done on paper and pencil? And I would also add in with manipulatives. She's heard many parents concerned that the elementary kids use too much of Dreambox, and not sure if they really understand the math behind pushing those buttons in the app. So we had several members of the group raise some questions and concerns about that. If anybody, Merritt just says, bring back paper and pencil. Yeah, and Mark said also that it would be great to get feedback from the teachers about the gap between what Dreambox estimates and their own evaluations. So again, Dreambox was sort of a big ticket item for us. Does anyone wish to elaborate on that? Michael, it looks like.
Sorry, C-Slack from Key Elementary. Yeah, I just wanted to say I understand and hear what people are saying about the Dreambox, but I don't think everybody feels like that. I just want to say that I think that it's, you know, a very good tool to use, and I'm glad that teachers are giving that choice. But you know, one of my key takeaways again was just that mathematics and the way that we approach mathematics instruction is causing a need to shift the way that teachers of pedagogical approaches essentially. So I think that's, you know, kind of the biggest takeaway that I'm getting from what the state is doing, and the change that we're talking about at the central office level in APS.
All right. Paula, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring back what we were talking about, if evaluations and the use of devices are detrimental for some students, and how the teachers have resources to identify those, and what can they do to help them.
Okay. I feel like there was something in the chat. I am terrible at multitasking. So yeah, interesting. Yeah,
it looks like Ken,
large.
Ken, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. One of my concerns that I learned at Aberdeen Elementary is that the atrophy that takes place over the summer, and how much time the teachers have to devote to get the kids back up to where they were at the end of 3rd grade going into 4th grade. And is that contributing to some of the challenges?
Right. And of course, during the pandemic, that dynamic was probably exacerbated a little bit by the long period of time not in the school building. All right, does anyone in I still see some hands up, and I don't know if that's just left over or if you have more to add, but I am, does anyone wish to add?
Thanks, that's terrific.
Yeah, okay.
I think what we can do is, you know, my intention is I wanted to capture some of this, and what we can do is frame it out a little bit as sort of topics and questions for school communities, and we'll send that out to you in the next couple of days to all the reps to be able to sort of take that into your communities. So I will jump over to middle and high, and we'll see. I'm going to hazard a guess that Jason gets to report out for middle and high.
Yeah, Kelly and I were vigorously direct messaging our notes while you guys were debriefing the elementary. So yeah, I'll summarize, and then folks who are in the room, it was a great conversation. Thanks everybody. Folks who are in the room, please chime in. We started out on the topic of wanting to see more use of pencil and paper. That was one, you know, that sort of tactile aspect of solving problems. And then also textbooks came up as well. So another of that theme of things, actually holding things in your hand. And also the benefit of having a textbook if you're tutoring somebody, so they could kind of be on the same page about what was actually being taught. The concept around accelerating too quickly, and the difference between rigor versus deep understanding, or getting more rigor and deep understanding versus just acceleration. That came up as well. And someone posted a really insightful comment about if there were other classes that offered acceleration, would that steer students in that direction versus thinking that the only place they can accelerate is math. So that's not something, I think a number of folks responded to that comment as being particularly insightful, as maybe another way to steer students towards acceleration, but maybe it's not math. Maybe they have other options. And then related to acceleration and maybe not being ready, the question of equity came up around access to tutors. You know, so kids who might find themselves in an accelerated spot might also have access to tutors, but a lot of kids don't. So how does that play out? So that was also brought up, highlighted as well. Let's see, I'm gonna keep going here. Another question that was brought up is, you know, if you find that you might be in over your head in a class, what are your options? Early on in the year, you can hopefully find that out and then think about what other options you might have at that time versus waiting till it's too late. So that was another theme that was brought up. Let's see. Keep just scrolling down here of our notes. Anything else that you would add, Kelly or anybody else? Oh, big one, I'm sorry. And the Vmpi concept, really questions about how do you differentiate instruction in that 8 to 10 time period with kids at different levels in a class, and how does that work for the kids, and how does that work for the students as well? So that was a big question flag as we start heading into that initiative and how it plays out. Folks, did I miss anything big? I'm sure I did.
I think Meredith brought up a good comment, the equity issue relative to which students get referred to accelerated classes, kind of what that looks like. I don't know that we have that on here.
Yep, there it is, yeah.
Well, and I might add, and then how are they supported? Because if the answer is supported by an external tutor, then APS is not necessarily serving those students. Okay, anything else from the high school group? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing. As I said, what we're going to do is we'll kind of package this up and turn it into some key takeaways and questions for communities to engage with. And then hopefully we can, learn some things from school communities, keep your ear to the ground, find some spaces and places where you can get some folks engaged in talking about math in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll have an opportunity for people to bring back some comments and takeaways from your communities in our next conversation. So I am going to, let's see, we are at 8:25. So again, because things are changing rapidly with the VLP and there are updates all the time. I know there was an update at the school board meeting and there will be one at the next school board meeting, but it was a topic that was of a lot of interest when we were here together in September. I wanted to give Bridget just a few minutes to quickly share anything that is anything new as of today.
Yes, and just a quick thing, I saw Kelly's post in the chat about sharing the pathway graphic. We absolutely can share that with you. We'll get that to Bethany and get that sent out to everybody. So yes, lots of changes with the virtual learning program. First, the new change is that the Office of School Support, headed by Kim Graves, is now responsible for continuing the operational work of the virtual learning program. So that would be things like staffing and scheduling. Because the virtual learning program is a program much like HB Woodlawn or Claremont, it is appropriate that the Office of School Support would provide that support as all of our schools align under the Office of School Support. So we are sharing the measures of support. So we've got operations and school support, and then academics is really focusing on the instructional support, the ordering of instructional resources, and then special education. And that aligns nicely with the work we have been doing. Kim Graves is working to hire a principal for the VLP. If you have been tracking, the current structure had been that the VLP had an administrator, and the decision was to move that to a principal to align again with the programs that we currently have, and to attract candidates that our sitting principals and have the sort of knowledge and know-how that is necessary to kind of address some of the challenges within the VLP. So that process is underway with the idea of hopefully bringing a candidate to the board on that they can appoint on October 14th. So that we can move forward there. We have had success in filling several staffing gaps, and our elementary schedule has been fully tightened, as have we're making progress in our middle and high school schedules. We have assigned a staff person to support students enrolled in online service provider classes. Those would be Virtual Virginia, Edgenuity, and those classes don't have kind of the same or commensurate support that a student would have if they were engaged with an APS teacher. So this staff member is checking in with kids to make sure that they're meeting deadlines, that they have been able to reach out to their teachers on Virtual Virginia to get the intervention, the additional supports that they might need. And so that's been reported to be of real help. We have been able to advertise for a full-time special education student support coordinator. Currently, we have one assigned for 2 days. The full-time would be able to work with our special education teachers for 4 days. And we're getting close to filling that position. And then we are developing a compensatory services plan. We have about 93 out of the 156 special education students in the virtual learning program who are eligible potentially to receive compensatory services because the hours of services on their on their IEPs have not been met. And so families of students with disabilities will be hearing from case carriers in the coming week to schedule those IEP meetings so we can begin moving forward with those compensatory services, and we'll be able to roll that plan out in the coming weeks as well. So that gives you a very fast summary of the progress that we've been making. And as Bethany said, the next school board meeting on the 14th, there will be a virtual learning program monitoring report.
Thank you so much. Okay, I do want to close on time this evening. So I have just dropped a reminder that if you did not yet sign in for the meeting this evening, I do want to make sure we record in the minutes our attendance. So please do drop your name and affiliation in the chat before you go. We meet again on the 3rd of November. And I believe that we most likely, 80–90% will be talking about literacy, structured literacy that evening. So, and we'll be talking about it at all levels through the system. So look forward to that conversation. We will be in touch in the next 3 to 5 days, maybe a week, to do a follow-up on math and to remind everyone to please do engage with your communities in conversation about math so that we can do a quick recap at the next meeting on that as well. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. It was good to see you all, and appreciate everyone's engagement in our conversations.
Thanks, everybody.